Well, it becomes quite wearying to hear about atrocities like this, but the worst thing we could do is get bored of it and just stop paying attention. So we begin with footage of another all-ages drag show, quote unquote, in Texas, attended and documented by Sarah Gonzalez of The Blaze. She says that she has more footage on the way, but the 30-second clip that she posted yesterday is shocking enough on its own. It shows a man in drag lifting up his skirt and gyrating around while people throw money at him. And in the background, you can see a child who can't be more than, 6 or 7 years old, looking on confused and obviously completely disturbed. Meanwhile, the music, which is blasting through the restaurant, is so vulgar and sexual that I can't play the clip with sound, and I can't even quote the lyrics to you. All I can say is that it's a woman rapping in extremely graphic terms about her genitals and about the various sex acts that she wants to perform. So there's at least one child in the building listening to that while watching a cross-dressing man dance around with his skirt pulled up to reveal the women's underwear underneath. And this is happening in Texas. I feel like we can't emphasize that enough. That so many of these things, so much of this footage that we're getting is from Texas. It's this bad in Texas. So we can be sure that it's even worse pretty much everywhere else in the country, especially in a place like Oregon, where, as Andy No reports for the Post Millennial, a bar is planning a drag show this coming weekend featuring an 11-year-old performer. And it gets worse. Reading from the article, it says, controversy has erupted after a pub in Eugene, Oregon, announced it is hosting a drag queen event featuring an 11-year-old child. An investigation by the Post Millennial has revealed that one of the child's drag moms, quote unquote, was recently charged with child sex abuse offenses. Quote, are you excited for drag queen storytime brunch this Sunday morning? Old Nick's Pub asked in a Facebook announcement. Vanellope is here to show you what an 11-year-old drag queen can do. The post featured several photos of Vanellope craving McPherson DuPont. That's the stage name of the child, including one where she is touching her chest and her mouth is open. The Post Millennial is not publishing the real name of the child. Old Nick's Pub is known locally in the university town for being a leftist bar, and it frequently hosts drag shows as well as sexual fetish events. Vanellope has performed at different events around the state of Oregon, sometimes with grown male performers in risque outfits since at least 2018. The girl has Cash App and Venmo accounts where adults often send her cash tips. Photographs on her Facebook page also show her being showered on stage with dollar bills. By the way, as you may note there, this article and others that I've read about this refer to the child as her. But if this is a drag queen, then you would think that would mean the child is actually a boy, unless they've now started dressing little girls up like drag queens too, which maybe they have. I'm not sure what's the case here, but either way, whether a girl or a boy, drag is an inherently sexualized burlesque performance, and there is no universe in which it would be acceptable to include children, either male or female, in such a spectacle, in any capacity, whether as spectators or especially as performers. Continuing on, it says, Vanellope's handler, Jennifer Hibbs, is also her drag mom. She uses a stage name Sunshine Ray McPherson and is a longtime LGBTQ activist. Hibbs clarified she is not the girl's parent or guardian, as previously reported, but is the handler for the child. Quote, her actual mother does her choreography so that it's all appropriate, Hibbs said. We wouldn't let her do anything suggestive. It's terrible that people assume that we would let her do that. We're the terrible ones, you see. Not the adults who are sexualizing and taking advantage of a child. We're the terrible ones. It's our assumptions that are terrible. But here's another important detail from No's report. It says, on August 11th, Vanellope's other long-term drag mom, Kelsey M. Boren, who uses the stage name Always Craving, was arrested in Lane County and charged with 12 felonies related to making and distributing child porn. Prosecutors found the 32-year-old such a danger to the public that they successfully petitioned the judge to deny her bail. At the time of her arrest, Boren was a teaching assistant for a special education student at Veneta Elementary in Veneta, Oregon. She allegedly told detectives that her need for child porn was like a, quote, uncontrollable itch that she couldn't stop. Now, a few things here are confusing. Well, more than a few things, but focusing just on these for a moment. For one thing, the pronoun situation is all over the map. Okay, it's not clear of the various people mentioned here which are actually females, though they all use female pronouns. I mean, it doesn't really make a difference, I suppose. The child is being exploited either way. The adults are creeps and degenerates and worse either way. But that is a confusing aspect of this. Also, I was not previously familiar with the term drag mom, though from context it seems that this is just another way of describing a professional groomer. The, quote, drag child is handed over to the drag mom to be groomed and conditioned. It seems to be essentially a sort of pedophilic, predatory farm system that the groomers have set up. So, what can be done about this? That's really the question. We've established that this is happening, and it's only getting worse over time. Progressivism does what the name suggests, what the label suggests. It's progressivism, so it progresses, except that it progresses in the same sense that, say, cancer progresses. It keeps spreading and getting worse and eating away at our civilization until it is stopped, or until it destroys its host. And just like cancer, stopping it is not a gentle or a painless process. The farther along the cancer is, the more aggressive you have to be in fighting it. Culturally, we are approaching, if we haven't already reached, a terminal state, which means we have to be all the more aggressive, which calls for two things. First, obviously, involving children in drag events in any capacity should be outright criminalized everywhere. There is no other way. This doesn't stop until police are breaking down the doors at these places and carting the adults away in handcuffs. Charge them all as pedophiles. Throw them in prison, and whenever they get out, if they do get out, put them on the sex offender registry for life. That man in the first clip dancing around with his skirt up should be treated legally as a child predator. That's the level of protection that our children are owed. And the people sexualizing and exploiting them are owed that level of punishment. This is something that needs to start in red states. And if Republicans take over the White House, it should be handled on the federal level as well. I know that that Republicans in Congress have just put out a bill that calls for the defunding, that forbids the federal government from funding or facilitating the sexualization of children in any form. And that includes, sexually explicit material being handed out in schools. That includes drag queen story hours and all the rest of it. And that's good, because certainly we should not be funding or in any way facilitating any of that. But we've got to go far beyond that. This should all be criminalized. Second, we don't have to wait for lawmakers to get their act together. We can act by heaping shame and scorn on the adults responsible for this. Public shame is an indispensable tool. It's one necessary for a civilized society to function. But it's one that we have, historically become quite shy about using. And when I say we, I don't mean the left, because the left, they're not shy about it. They'll shame their enemies without hesitation. They'll destroy your life and your reputation if they can. So public shame is their number one tool. It's their favorite tool to use. The difference is that they are most often heaping shame on people who don't deserve it, and they're doing it as a means of avoiding intellectual engagement. We, on the other hand, should be making social pariahs out of people whose behavior warrants it, because we have tolerated far too much. The very people who are the quickest to wield shame as a weapon somehow convinced us that we shouldn't use it ever. Oh, it's wrong to shame people. You can't shame people, they say, while they go around shaming everyone. The effect is a culture where people can do the most shameful things without any shame at all. Notice how all these places, they advertise their child drag queen shows, and they're all, quote, all ages drag shows and all the rest of it. And it's the same story over and over again. They advertise it, they put the flyers out, they put the stuff up on Facebook. They oftentimes will post their own videos of these things. And then they start scrambling and panicking when the backlash comes. Now, you might think, well, that's an act. They're pretending, but I don't think it is an act. They sincerely did not expect any public outrage because they've been able to do whatever they want for so long without anyone criticizing them for it. So they assume that would continue. They have gotten comfortable, far, far too comfortable, I would say. And now it's up to us to make them uncomfortable. And that'll do it for this portion of the show as we move over to the members block. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Godspeed.